Everybody, Uneducated Economist here. So, in this video, we're going to be talking about lumber, giving the lumber update. This is probably going to be one of the more important videos for a lot of the people who follow this channel, talking about the lumber industry. Now, when you look at the lumber industry and you think about what it is that's happening within the housing industry, and you have to think about what it is that's taking place also within the new construction and the mindset of the builder out there. There is a lot of factors that are going to start driving the issues that we are going to be seeing coming to the lumber industry as the mill curtailments are going to be creating shortages. There is very little doubt in my mind that this will be happening. So for months now, months and months, I have been talking about how the mills out there are not operating in a profitable fashion when they are at 500 per thousand. It is far too low for these mills, and they have been in curtailment for months. We have reported on it quite a bit. Now, I'm going to leave a link down in the description. One of the biggest lumber manufacturers, producers out there in the entire globe is Interfor. Interfor has announced mill curtailments to the tune of like 35 million board feet. I can't even remember exactly how much they were saying, but it's quite significant, and it's going to December for the foreseeable future. How about that? For the next 5 or 6 months, we are going to see the number one mill producer out there, and I wouldn't necessarily say they're the number one, but they're definitely in the top three mill producers or lumber producers out there tightening up the inventory. Now, again, this is for the reason, right? They are trying to restrict the amount of inventory out there. You bring the supply down, and if you have any kind of increase to demand, or if the demand supply imbalances are enough, you will start finding the price increases, and this is what they're looking for. And I don't know how else to express it to you, but lumber is cheap. It is back to its all-time normal price, what we had experienced back in 2017 and 18. All the inflation is gone from lumber. It doesn't exist there right now, and this is your last chance to buy it cheap. It's not going to get any cheaper than this. This is it. This is the bottom, right? And if you have any kind of significant projects coming into the future, you're going to find that the longer you wait, the more expensive that lumber is going to get. Until probably next year, when we start seeing the mill curtailments coming to an end, the price levels will probably be elevated and the mills will go back into production again. This is most likely the scenario. Now, nobody can predict the future and nobody knows what's going to happen. If interest rates were to be cut, say in September, I mean, there's a very real possibility that could happen. Now, if it does happen, I could only assume that is going to be driving housing demand. People are going to want to purchase homes, believing that they can refinance in the future at a cheaper price, and that is going to spark builder demand, and you already are going to know ahead of time that there is not enough lumber in the system. This aligns perfectly with the idea of curtailing until December, sometime after September, when the interest rates, if they were to get cut, right, hypothetically speaking, if they were to cut rates, then you would find sometime in the beginning of 2024 that impact of interest rate cuts really affecting the economy, which would then have the demand for lumber increasing as the builders would want to take advantage of that situation. Right? The cheaper interest rates, then having the buyer come to market and them wanting to provide the product for those buyers out there. This is what we're facing. And, this is something, and it's really complicated for a lot of people to wrap their heads around initially, because, they have already this belief in the system set up, or this belief within the system that has now set them up for not understanding exactly how this is going down. Because a lot of people are going to say the manipulation and all kinds of stuff. Believe me, that's why I put out these videos so far ahead of time and try to explain what it is that's happening, because by the time we get there and we do see how the curtailments are really impacting the lumber market, when they're really creating shortages, and then the demand picks up and the prices skyrocket, people are going to scream manipulation. Just know it now, it's not. right? I mean, we're talking about it ahead of time. It can't be manipulation if we're talking about it ahead of time. Mills cannot produce at 500 per thousand. They have already said this for months now, and it's been at 500 per thousand for a very long time. Lumber futures closed at under 450. That's like devastating to the mills in their operations at this point. No wonder they're going to curtail. And they're going to curtail a lot. I work at a lumber yard. I do retail sales for a living. We are already facing this situation, right? Where there's gaps in production, where you can't find particular items. Other items are an extreme sale. It's incredible to see, right? How do we get this lumber to move? You can only get it to move at a cheaper price. If it's a cheaper price, we're not going to produce. Which one is it? And you can see the issues. Like, this is the paradox that they are facing right now. Like, literally, I get there's summertime deals and they have these studs at incredibly cheap price, but then you can't find a unit of 2x8 or 2x12. It's just like, what in the world's happening here? It's because those mills are only producing what it is that's going to sell. And 2x4 and 2x6 plate stock is going to be the most common material out there. Beams, wider material, longer lengths, not so prevalent within the demand out there. But the studs and plate stock is in very high demand comparatively to the rest of it. So what is it that a mill is going to produce when there is only demand for these particular, or the price doesn't really give them the ability to produce a variety of material? They only can produce what it is that's selling. Right? Like, that's the only direction they're going to move to, and then they flood that particular market. And it's so odd to see it happening, but again, I'm trying to explain it for what it's really going on here. Now, a lot of you know that I get this lumber update once a week, right? And it's basically kind of giving us a little bit of an idea of what it is that's happening throughout the rest of the industries and throughout the country out there, especially when it comes to like OSB, plywood, southern yellow pine, the spruce pine fir. These are all different markets and different regions, and they all have their own kind of issues going on with it. Starting off with OSB, oriented strand board. A lot of you know this as chipboard, or a lot of people will refer to it as shitwood, because it's a lesser product comparatively to plywood, but it's used in the exact same fashion. So it's a sheathing. Basically, if you were to understand a new constructed home, the skeleton of the building is like the studs, right? The skin that goes on the outside, that's the sheathing. That's what goes on to kind of keep the whole building intact before all the doors and windows and siding and all that other stuff goes into it. So the sheathing is down to the framing part of the house, and OSB is the cheaper version of this sheathing, as far as what could be comparatively to like plywood. Okay, so OSB, oriented strand board, was more readily available in the South than in the North, right? And I'm experiencing that ourselves. Like, we don't even stock OSB at our yard. We have in the past. Occasionally we'll bring in a unit if it's available or if the price is right. But ultimately, I can sell 4-ply CDX for almost the same price as I can sell OSB. So it's like, why even stock OSB when you can sell them a plywood that's a 4-ply as opposed to a 5-ply, which is individual little veneer that's glued together and makes it, essentially a 5-ply would be stronger than a 4-ply. But there's no need to stock OSB when it's not even really available, and I can sell a plywood for almost the same price. So that's like, I'm experiencing that exact thing. Down in the southern part of the United States, it's definitely more prevalent, and people are probably finding that the prices are going to be much more adequate to the efficient, like the cheaper price. Like, they would probably find that the pricing there is going to be a lot less than what it would be as far as plywood goes, right? In those areas where it's supplied. Sorry guys, I'm kind of stumbling over my words here. Okay, the exception was Eastern Canada. On Thursday, there was still some cars being offered for shipment next week. So it looks like there's available up in Eastern Canada. Plywood. Southern yellow plywood activity was pretty brisk this week. Thanks to Hurricane Debbie, sheathing was just about impossible to find for most of the week. And I would agree with that for the most part, except that we were able to actually get a truckload of plywood for our yard in a fairly quick manner. But when we call around looking for other units and stuff like that, we just happen to nail it, just like, so to speak. We just happen to get this particular truck in like perfect timing because it is shortage out there. Like we're finding it very difficult and the prices are moving up dramatically. And I think that's probably more of the indicator of the shortages because like I've said before, like down in the southern part of the United States or over, in the southeastern part of the United States, OSB is prevalent. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, plywood is prevalent. And so like I have access to plywood, but the prices are moving up. They have access to OSB, and I would imagine they're probably starting to see the prices moving up as well. All right. Mills, let's see, next week. Okay, let's move to lumber here on this report. Western SPF, which stands for spruce pine fir. The Western spruce continued to rise on limited sales this week. We are seeing less than anticipated production available to sell. This seems to have been triggered by the lack of logs. The current forest fire situation and the potential of rail strike will keep a firm footing. Mill order files are out to the mid-August. All right, so order files is from the time you order to the time you get it. So typically, like a week or two. That's kind of normal. Like during the shortages, it was moving out to like months, 2 or 3 months. Wildfire update. Hot, dry weather has returned to BC and Alberta this week. The fire weather indices have increased and once again creating additional fire starts. Futures. Cash has been tightening up and futures have been giving back. Base is shortened down to 27. The increase in cash seems to be more supply driven as opposed to significant spike in demand. Mills are working through summer shutdowns. This market is momentum based and we will likely see swings both ways before expiration. Eastern price continues to be moving higher as measured pace. Fires out west and rail embargoes got market moving 2 weeks prior. 2x6 random loads continue to be a challenge to procure, right? So 2x6 number 2 random loads. See, like there it is. That's like it's getting difficult to get the 2x6s. That's what they're saying right there over on the eastern side. Not impossible, just just challenging, right? And that's another sign of it because there's very low demand. This is the problem, right? If demand picks up, we're gonna get hit here. All right. Southern pine, all zones. Southern yellow pine found its flat spot as demand eased some past week. 2x4 still moved forward with both number 1 and number 2 to modest demand, but enough to go up 5 to 10 in all zones. 2x6 and 2x8 were flat by the end of the week, but have been trending in a upward 5 range for the beginning of the week. Wide still caught heavy premiums. Here we go. Wide still caught heavy premiums, even with mild activity. Hot weather mixed with tropical storms in the Gulf put the large logs back on hold. We see double-digit premiums on 2x12 especially, right? Premiums on 2x12 because there's not as much available. As mills struggle to offer mixed trucks here. That's right. Curtailments will remain on, although they seem to not be having the desired effects. Right? This is why Interfer has just announced as much mill curtailment on production as they are doing. Expect flat to modest gains for the next few weeks. Western species dry. Let's see. Activity was a bit tighter or lighter this week compared to last week. However, the market continues to be on firm ground for the time being. This trend is expected to continue in the near term, and we expect the market to level off more so within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Lead times on average are running 2 weeks with very little prompt material available. So yeah, see, they're pushing the lead times are starting to push out too. That's essentially what they are saying there. And it's like not terrible right now, but it's not going to get any shorter than 2 weeks is what it seems to be. Especially if you get real curtailments kicking in, you're going to find those lead times pushing out ever further. Those. All right, studs here. We are starting to see signs of opportunity on studs. Numbers have held over the past couple of weeks, but we have specifically seen mills get aggressive on 104 trims this week in both 2x4 and 2x6. These discounts, okay, right here, see, this is what I was experiencing personally. These discounts aren't expected to be long-lived. All right, see that, I mean, and if you have the need, it is a good time to look. The item that is most difficult to cover in regards to studs currently are the 2x6 92s. Absolutely. Those are by far the most popular stud in the entire pre-cut stud market is a 2x6 92. Right? And what that means, 92 and 5/8, is they pre-cut the stud so that you end up with an 8-foot wall and it accommodates the sheetrock better when you have a single bottom plate and a double top plate. So ultimately, it trims the stud to the right height so that, you know, you don't have to deal with an extra little gap in your drywall, because most drywall is going to be 8 feet, right? So if you have an 8-foot stud and you have a top and bottom plate, now you have an extra 4.5 inches to deal with. So what they do is they trim these studs down to make it more accommodating for the 8-foot drywall. And just expedites the project that much easier. It makes it easier for drywalling and all that. Let's see here, what else? In the white fir, hem fir, a bit more inventory has been seen out of the coastal fir mills recently, but the mills are still reporting a steady order file. We're really not seeing any major discounts yet, but if a mill is needing a loading, don't be bashful on these items. Don't expect mills to give much. All right, Doug fir large. Demand remains fairly strong in regards to the 2x4, 2x8 through 2x12, with 2x6 and 2x10 and 2x12 being the most sought after widths. Straight 16-foot loads remain very difficult to come by because that's by far the most popular length of lumber that you could buy outside of a stud. If you're going to buy anything longer than a stud length, it's going to be 16-footers. That's the length. Because you think about it, most wall plates and stuff like that, generally on a house don't run much more than 16 feet. Like there are some that run 20 or feet longer or whatever on it, but most of the time your cutting plate stock is going to be 16 feet or shorter, or so. All right, select structural hem fir, Doug fir. Availability remains spotty overall. We're seeing better availability in regards to the KD Doug fir select structural versus the white fir hem fir counterpart. There are also more availability in narrows currently versus wides. Again, this is same thing that I was experiencing. Go down here to green dimensional. Green fir saw solid increases across the board in the 2x lumber this week. The only exception to the strong increases were studs. Studs printed flat, but will challenge next week as buyers start to realize the ship times on even studs are getting pushed further out as the weeks has gone on. Right? Again, it's anytime you have like lengthening time out there, that's the shortages that are happening. You have to wait to get the material. And it's just it's a preliminary sign to what is going to be coming. Let me see, the timbers and cuttings market has also remained rock solid. 4-inch has had a couple of very solid weeks with demand in California finally taken off. Look for 4x material to remain strong with numbers moving up. Cuttings of 6x and larger will continue to show increase as the mills shift their available resources to produce more 4-inch. That's talking in the green stuff, which is typical of your beam stock and stuff like that. So that might actually bring some relief to the beam area, but I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Anyhow, I just wanted to give you guys that little bit of a lumber update and to think about like what it is that's going to be coming to the future here, if there is actual rate cuts coming in September and what that's going to do to the lumber market. Like if you already have issues and been having issues within the lumber industry for months now, and then make obvious announcements of mill curtailments, you have to think Interfer is not going to be the only one. There's going to be other smaller mills out there that are going to follow suit for the same reasons that Interfer is doing it. And if you have this dramatic pullback in the production of lumber, well, that's going to cut supply even more, and the shortages are going to eventually find their impact on the economy, and they are going to rise. Now, how long that takes and what it is that triggers the increase or the skyrocketing in prices, there's a number of factors that can happen, right? I mean, could it come from just the idea that people are going to be able to refinance going into the future and just start the spark a housing market demand before the Federal Reserve even does anything? Or will it take an actual interest rate cut from the Federal Reserve to put that confidence within the builder to say, yeah, I'm going to start building, knowing that there is going to be buyers coming to the table to buy my house if I was to start a house today with the idea going into the future that I'll be able to sell it for today's current value. That's the biggest concern coming from the builder, right? And that there would be a buyer there at the end of that project. So if that pressure is relieved upon the builder, that's going to spark demand. And you're going to find from the issues that we have talked about regularly on this channel, they're going to find that lumber prices are going to move up. If the contracts are signed and they are moving forward with that project and the lumber is unavailable, they will pay any price. It's inelastic demand. They are contracted. They are forced. They have no other choice. They have to go out there and purchase it. It's not something that they have say, hey, maybe we'll wait till later. You're going to have to give a better price. No, they signed a contract. We will go forward. They are going forward regardless, no matter what, right? And so we know with the shortage of lumber in the market and that spark in demand, if it were to take off, they're going to face that situation. Lumber prices are going to skyrocket. It's not manipulation. It's not manipulation. Lumber mills can't produce at 500 per thousand. They're going to not produce. That's not, I mean, you can't blame them for that, right? I mean, that's not something you can blame them. They are like, hey, we would love to produce. We can't produce and not profit and expect to continue to operate. So unfortunately, we just have to shut down production, tighten up the inventory, and once the prices come back, they'll start coming back and producing. That's not something that you can blame them for. Like anybody would do that. Like, I mean, it's just the way it is. Would you, go and produce and sell something for less than, what it costs you to make it? No, of course not. Right? That doesn't make any sense. So it does make sense for them to curtail. And it does make sense for them to tighten up inventory. And it does make sense that if a contractor has signed a contract on a house and he has to buy lumber and it's not available, the price is going to explode. Right? That all makes sense. And so we are watching the pieces line up for that event. So again, when the time comes and we do see these prices move up, right? And now, again, nobody can predict the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen in September. Nobody knows what's going to happen with the buyers out there. But if it all lines up in the fashion in which that I believe it does, then what you're going to see is you're going to see the lumber prices, dramatically increase as the availability is just very limited. All right. I don't know if I could go over it any more than that. I think you guys got it. All right. Any questions, comments, statements? Let's go check it out. What's up, UE? We're here. Love the shirt. Yeah, my Rebel Capitalist shirt, right? All right. A lot of layoffs in Wisconsin in lumber. Yeah. The hat. Yeah, my Uneducated Economist hat. This was given to me by a fan. All right. How come West Fraser stock is still so expensive? It hasn't come down. Yeah, and you know what? I'm actually kind of surprised by a lot of this. You got Weyerhaeuser, Boise, all these people all have, kind of elevated stock prices right now, considering. Now, I'm not one to judge how come a stock or a company or anything else and why their stock price is up like that. I'm not a stock trader. Like, I don't do that. That's not what I do. I find it very interesting. Now, I called out nail, like I said it, a while ago, that nail at its bottom even. Like at the very, if you go and look at the ETF nail, which is a 3 times leveraged ETF for building supplies and builders, home builders, that literally right after I was saying, hey, check out this, this particular stock, it's kind of interesting. I'm not suggesting that you buy it. I'm not suggesting that you sell it. I'm not suggesting anything. Just look at it. right? That's all I say, because you all have to make your own decisions for yourself, right? Now, when I looked at that, I was like, man, this is really intriguing to me. I kid you not. It was like within just a matter of a few weeks, that stock had, I don't know, damn near doubled in price. Pretty big shocker, right? Like, I look at that and I think, man, this doesn't make real sense, like, at all. But then again, a lot of stuff within the economy doesn't make a lot of sense. As time goes on, you look back on it, and of course, hindsight's always 2020. You start to look back and you're like, okay, well, yeah, I guess, maybe these things and these factors that we now, contribute to the outcome here makes more sense than we did at the time because we just didn't know it. So I'm not going to try to guess or assume or anything about stock prices or a particular company or anything else like that, because I just don't know, right? Like, I am not that dude. I look at things that are much different. Like, for example, since we were talking about Wisconsin just now, I left a link, that's kind of ironic, I left a link down in the description to mass timber industry article where they are planning, or at least in the discussions of planning this thing, the world's tallest wooden skyscraper, or wooden, not necessarily skyscraper, but high-rise building. I didn't mean skyscraper, but high-rise building, 42 floors, right? The biggest one right now, I believe, is 26 floors or something. So this one's going to like double that, right? And it's all out of wood construction. And this is really interesting to think about when you have like very few people have become aware of the mass timber industry out there, or the cross-laminated timber industry. I feel that this is going to be the biggest, newest advancement to building that I don't necessarily think it's going to revolutionize the building industry, but I think it's going to be one of the biggest changes to how construction of new buildings, especially when it comes to like the industrial buildings, hospitals, schools, the museums, these apartment complexes, and even residential houses will probably start moving to more of this cross-laminated timber industry type of application. And the reason why is because it's really like, it's a pretty sound product to begin with, and like I can tell you on all the sales advantages of it. But I think probably like the number one, especially for like commercial buildings, is how less impactful it is on the surrounding environment of that particular job site. So typically when you have like a concrete constructed building, all this fabrication has to take place on site. Cutting, welding, pouring concrete, all this like stuff has to happen on site as you can construct it, as you begin to construct this building. Now, with the mass timber industry, or the cross-laminated timber industry, pieces arrive and just literally get set into place. There's no real fabrication, it's just assembly, right? And so now you have very little impact on the surrounding environment comparatively to like a traditionally concrete steel building. You have very little impact on the surrounding environment. And so now these pieces can just come in on truck and literally craned into place and assembled, with all the fabrication being at a controlled environment someplace else. I think this is a wonderful idea. And I think that it's, oh, Jesus, this scared the shit out of me, Freddie. Thank you so much, bud. You want to say hi to the guys?
Yeah. There's one thing I've been wanting to show on,
Oh, here, let's get a little break here and let Freddie tell his tale. What do you got there, bud?
It's a little gimmick bill. $1 million bill.
A $1 million bill? Here, let's show him here. That's funny. Where'd you get that?
It was from 4th of July.
Oh, it's from the 4th of July. What does it say on the back?
Just a little story.
Is it a biblical story there, or is it?
I think, it's a church story.
Yeah. Something, yeah.
Matthew gave it to me.
Oh, that's cool. Very nice, bud.
Yeah.
Thanks for the coffee.
Yeah.
Forgot what I was talking about. Go hit the like button, everybody. We're at 83 likes right now with 257 people watching. My boy does that to me all the time. It's lunchtime, Dad. Keep it, Isaac, turning into Zimbabwe soon. Yeah. I have a $3 bill with a Monica Lewinsky on it. All right. Their wages was apparently $18 per hour, no OT. Yes, I bet they work hard. Trump trillion. Scrooge back here. You demand, Simon. Thank you. Have a great day. Yeah, thank you, Amos, for being here, man. Worker health and safety means nothing to all these greed. China does it with steel and solar panels. We need some breakfast tacos. Yeah, we do. All the layoff keep their stock prices high. Huh. Oh, that's interesting to think about. Like, I didn't really think about that short-term aspect of it. Like, when you lay people off, all of a sudden now you have a bunch of revenue because you haven't been paying your employers, but you don't, like, I mean, how much revenue do you really have from it? But you don't have as much expense, right? So therefore, you cut your expense, and then your company, I guess, looks a little better for that moment. Is that the reason? Like, see, again, like, I don't study companies like this. I don't think about it in that way. Like, I just think about their production and stuff like that and how much demand there is, but I don't think about like their pricing and how that stock price is manipulated by their, basically their output cost or whatever. And if you eliminate that, that should increase their stock price. I mean, is that kind of like the idea behind it? Do I get that right? Let's see. Biden getting ready to issue 1 trillion coin. That won't work. That would seal the deal on his presidency right there. Like on like his like never mind. I don't even want to discuss $1 trillion coin. All right. So are big pockets of inflation going to lead to hyper inflation later on? I don't think so. Like, I don't see an inflationary scenario. I really don't. Like, everybody else seems to think that it's going to be like this hyperinflation scenario that's not a matter of if but when, and I don't see it that way. Like, everything that I have studied from the Federal Reserve's monetary policy strategy, they are scared shitless of deflation, not inflation. In fact, they have a hell of a time finding inflation. Right now, they're all giving each other high fives saying, man, we got our ammo back. We're getting the neutral interest rate to rise. We got everybody buffaloed. Nobody knows what the hell we're doing out here except for the uneducated economist, and nobody's listening to them anyway. So, right, it's... I mean, you think about it, guys. Like, I am like literally 1 degree away from a Federal Reserve president. I could and I'm gonna use it wisely, right? But I have a contact at the Philadelphia Fed, and it's not like it's a secret thing, right? It's not like I got some like secret insider contact or anything like that. It's not like anything else that's going to be like even considered like insider knowledge. This is all available. There's nothing that I am discussing and nothing that I would ask a question of that is not something that anybody else could ever possibly do. It's like it's out there. Going for it and finding it is the difficult part. All right? I mean, that's the hard part, because most of us, when we gather information, we are gathering it from the sources that are provided. But very rarely do we go in search of. And that's where, like, diving into these speeches, I was going in search of this information. I found something that was very different from what everybody else was discussing, because everybody else is kind of regurgitating the same thing. And that's I mean, it's not like it's not factual, and it's not real. That's not the case of it. The situation is that the objective of the Federal Reserve and what it is that they are really truly attempting to do is not spoken out there in a way that is like real to the strategy of what it is that they were attempting to do with their Fed funds rate. Like, a lot of people are looking at the Federal Reserve saying, oh man, they have this issue with inflation. And I'm like, no, they don't. They have an issue with the Fed funds rate and the lower bound of zero and neutral interest rates being close to zero. That's their issue. Like this over here, this inflation thing, yeah, that's the one that everybody's focused in on. And thank God that everybody's focused in on it. This is from the Federal Reserve's point of view, because if they were focused in on the neutral interest rate being close to zero with the Fed funds rate hitting the lower bound and then running out of monetary policy, that is what scared the hell out of the Federal Reserve. So if they could keep the attention off of that, which is actually what a lot of the politics is all about, right? I mean, even the two presidential candidates don't bring up neutral interest rates. They don't bring up the lower bound of zero, and they don't bring up the fact that the Federal Reserve ran out of their monetary policy. But yet some of them believe that they know better, right? Right? But yet, if you can't bring up these topics and say, hey, man, this was the original issues that the Federal Reserve was facing back in 2018, right? Monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world, right? How many times do I have to bring it up? Every single time, because people still don't seem to get it, that having inflationary scenario saved the Federal Reserve. It's not hurting them. This is saving them. And understanding how it's saving them through the rising of the neutral interest rate then gives you a much clearer and better understanding of why the situation is occurring the way it is. It's not because they lost control over price inflation or something. They desperately needed that to occur. Desperately needed that to occur. Right? And I can't explain it any more because I do it in every single video, right? Just read this speech. Read this speech and think about the things that I have said over the last few years. I mean, monetary policy had an issue. No, this is it, right? Ironically, the problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. A few years later, they got it. The problem they needed to solve, they solved it. They needed an inflation that was persistently too high. It's right there. It's written right there. I'm not making it up. Right? Monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world by the Federal Reserve, November of 2018, given by John Williams, New York Fed president. It's right there. Right? The problem they needed to solve was the risk of inflation that was persistently too low rather than too high. They have solved that problem. Think about it. Everybody is convinced that there's inflation out there, but yet silver, oil, lumber, 50% of their all-time high. 50% of their all-time high, the three most vital commodities known to man. Without silver, all the electronics, everything that we face, all the communications, gone. Lumber has been the number one constructed material since human existence. Right? And now that oil, we practically eat oil. I mean, think about that. We practically eat oil. In a practical fashion, without the tractors, without the trucking, without the massive industrial complex we have going into the food production, we would starve and die. We eat oil. Oil, silver, timber, 50% of their all-time high. Right? But yet everything else is a manufactured good. Well, you think about it, that's secondary. That's a production issue. That's a transportation issue. That's a supply issue. That's a demand issue. Right? There's all kinds of bullwhip effect that is running rampant through the economy in all kinds of ways. But look at those three commodities, three number one most vital commodities to the human existence. It's hard to tell which one of those is the number one most vital. Right? That's how I see it. That's how I look at these things. It was like everybody says inflation's going to kill you. I'm like, how come those three are sitting so low other than they're manipulated, right? Because they are. I know it. Right? I mean, I know how silver's manipulated. 100 to 1 paper silver ounces, 150 to 1 even probably. Little doubt in my mind. But understanding it for what it really is. This is like, you can say money printer go burr, prices go up. Okay, so you're done, right? You don't need to know any more about the economy. I mean, you figured it out. But I'm looking over here saying, man, if you take on that attitude that money printer go burr, prices go up, you're solving the Federal Reserve's problem. Right? You're actually contributing to the progress of the Federal Reserve's existence. Think about that. All the people out there who are talking exactly opposite of me, and I don't want to name them out there, but people ask me all the time, well, how come this person says something that's so differently from you? Have you ever thought about debating them? And I'm like, sure, I'll debate anybody. Right? I mean, I've had people email me offering to debate some other people out there. I don't hear replies. I say, yeah, I'll do it. And they don't go back. They're like, oh man, the uneducated economists don't want to fight that dude. Right? He does things without editing. He's flying off the seat of his pants. He does things out of memory, pulling out, speeches from years ago, 20 years ago even, describing the events that are occurring today. Because I know for the last 2 decades that they have been planning the events leading up to the lower bound of zero. I saw it coming. Like, I didn't see it coming. They saw it coming. I read about that as they described it to the other central bankers out there. That's what these speeches are all about. Describing what is occurring, how they're planning on conducting themselves to the other central bankers. I mean, think about it. How many other YouTubers, news articles, or anybody else brings up speeches saying, hey, in this speech, that a voting member of the FOMC who's about ready to vote on monetary policy is saying about monetary policy? How many people do that? Almost none. Like, literally, I can't find anybody. Because if they did, they'd be bringing this speech up constantly. Constantly. I'm going to make John Williams wish he never wrote this thing. Right? I want everybody in the world to know exactly what it was that he was planning for the monetary policy, or what he was suggesting, I should say, for monetary policy that seemed to exactly occur the way he said it should go. And this was in 2018. Right? It's obvious. It's obvious when you start diving into this stuff and you start researching it down and not take the information that is being handed to you, but go and take the information from them that they don't necessarily want you to see. It's available for you, but you have to go get it, Or you can follow like the Uneducated Economist membership channel, like the membership portion of this channel. We break down these speeches. Like, you don't have to read them. You can sit there and just listen to me stutter through it, right? And have a discussion about it. And, go through some of the comments and, read through what it is that these other people are having for their ideas and what their thoughts are on as far as monetary policy goes. We internalize this stuff, and then we read articles out there that just like don't make any sense when you have these economists out there making theories and suggestions and ideas about what it is the Federal Reserve was doing, and then using a 2% target as their strategy. Who's going for a 2% target? Not the Federal Reserve. I mean, the Federal Reserve isn't going for a 2% inflation target. I don't know who the hell came up with that, but that's not what they're doing. I mean, back in August of 2020, Jerome Powell made the statement that they had changed their monetary policy view and that they are going for an average inflation rate over time, which means that inflation may not be at 2%. An appropriate monetary policy was seeking to achieve inflation that was moderately above 2% for some time. Right? Not a 2% target, moderately above 2%. Exactly where we're at. Or, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the hell moderately above is. What is it, 3%, 4%, 8%, 2.2%? I don't know what moderately above. That's not defined. Right? So I'm guessing, yeah, okay, we're moderately above 2%. Seems reasonable. Right? What's their dual mandate? Low inflation, stable prices, full employment. That's their mandate. Nothing else. Not housing market stay elevated, not this person gets elected, not stock market gets to go up. None of that stuff. That is not their mandate. And I don't care what anybody else has to say about that. That's not part of their monetary policy, because I cannot find anything within the strategy that includes anything outside of stable prices, low inflation, and full employment. Outside of that, I can't find anything that's part of their dual mandate or anything that they even discuss about it. They just don't. Like, other people might find it in their conspiracy theory minded delusional concepts, which, I mean, may have a lot of reality base to it, but it's not part of their strategies, not that I can find, not in all the hundreds of speeches that I've read. Low inflation, stable prices, full employment. They ran into a problem. They ran into a problem at the lower bound of zero. They could no longer stimulate the economy with the dropping of interest rates that had failed. And we know it. We saw it. We saw it occur at the end of the Trump administration with historically low unemployment, and there was no inflation. Impossible. That would have been an impossible scenario just 15 years earlier, 20 years earlier. You had historically low unemployment like that, you would have had inflation flying through the roof. Didn't occur. You know why? It's because they hit the lower bound of zero. Lower 0 to low interest rates are actually a deflationary force upon the economy because the return on capital investment goes negative. See, that's the problem that most people didn't realize was happening when they hit the lower bound of zero, is that it was actually a deflationary environment that they could not find inflation from. And everybody was looking at asset prices and going, "Oh, look at right there, man. Look at the house prices. Look at this, look at that." And I'm like, yeah, I know. If you borrow money to buy those things, that's what's going to go up. But everything else was failing to keep going with the inflationary scenario that the Fed was looking for. Yeah, you found it in asset prices. You found it in bonds. You found it in these other things out there, but not where the Federal Reserve was hoping to find it. It failed. Failure, right? No good. And so understanding that and understanding that they had to change the way that they were conducting themselves, knowing that it was through the communications that they were putting out there through the different conduits. We were just learning about that. Like they were, communicating in a particular fashion to particular people in a particular way so that they could put the impression into those people because they wouldn't have even looked. Like this was part of the game. And so it's no accident. We are here on purpose by design. And now you can give it any meaning you want, that they do it for modern day slavery purposes or something like that. Yeah, okay. I can get that, I can see that for sure, because you're debt slave, you have to work for the system and all that stuff, blah, 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 right? I'm not trying to knock it. That's true, right? But I don't give it that meaning. Right? My meaning goes towards that I look at this stuff for the way it is, and I have to position myself most accordingly for that. However that is, whether it's buying rental properties, starting a business, getting into dividend-paying stocks, getting into silver and gold, buying guns and ammo, figuring out how to can food, whatever it is, you got to figure that out. Okay? Once you have internalized this, you will start to figure that out. You will just intuitively be making the right decisions. You'll be going, holy crap, I need to learn to can. Maybe I'll go down to the hardware store, buy a case of quart jars and lids, go and buy some fruit that's on sale and learn to can that stuff. Like there's videos, there's internet, there's all kinds of places. It's actually kind of fun, right? And then you can store that stuff and you don't have to use any energy to store it after you have made it. Once you get good at making that stuff, learn how to do it without power, without electricity. Right? Use a coal fire, like a fire or something like that, and pressure cook under a wooden fire and learn how to do it. You got to maintain that heat constant without ever letting it drop. Right? That's a very tricky thing to do, but if you can do it, you can can food and you don't need any power. You don't need any kind of external. You can be doing it off the grid, right? Out in the middle of the woods. That's a hell of a skill to have, and nobody knows how to do that. There's some people, my wife can do it. You bring my wife 100 pounds of anything. I don't care what it is. You can even bring her 200, 300. It doesn't matter how much it is. All right. It's just work. You bring her 100 pounds of anything. She will have it in jars sitting in the pantry by the end of the day. Done. No problem. Doesn't matter what it is. You bring her fish. You can bring her fruit. You can bring her, anything. It doesn't matter. It's a hell of a skill to have. Let's go check out this super chat. All right, Jack Stewart, thank you so much for the $2, man. My money towards your 6-pack of NA Sierra Nevada. Hey, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. And we might do that this weekend. I might go get myself some of those NA beers. All right, you do not need a pressure cooker. You do need pressure cooker on some things. You don't need pressure cooker for some of the high acid fruits and like tomatoes and stuff like that. But other things like tuna and chicken and stuff like that, you absolutely. I don't know. Maybe there is another way of doing it, but as far as I know, you need to pressure cook that stuff. All right. And like I said, maybe there is other ways of canning it and preserving it, but as far as I know, in order to kill the botulism kind of stuff in there, you have to pressure cook that stuff, and you have to do it good. You have to do it right, and you have to do it sanitary and clean and stuff. And we've done videos on it actually, so on this channel. China is the #1 exporter of lumber, but the United States is the world's largest producer of lumber. I don't think that's right. Maybe largest producer, I believe Canada is the number one producer and exporter of lumber, right? I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe the question is a little misstated, because like producing and exporting might be too, like you can produce a lot of lumber but never export any of it, right? Like you can be the number one producer and consume all you produce and still be the number one producer, right? Or whatever, but not be the number one exporter. So I guess there's like, you know, depending on what the question is asked or whatever, but I'm pretty sure Canada exports more lumber than anybody. Germany too, right? I mean, Germany is an amazing exporter of timber. The United States exports timber. You know, I mean, I would imagine like is it lumber or timber, right? There's a difference, right? You got raw logs and you got sawn lumber boards, right? Like actual boards. Those are two different products. Like the United States exports a lot of raw logs, like a lot of them. Like, I don't even know how many comparatively to like other nations, but it's an insane amount. I watch it happen here out of the Columbia River. It's like one of the number one exported items coming out of here. So, you know, it's a different, I guess it depends on how you're asking that question and what it really, you know, what it really says about it. All right, the Amish don't use a pressure canner. Yeah, okay, so I can imagine that there is ways of doing it. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what that is. Like, I just watch my wife can food, and she uses pressure cookers, and she uses boilers. Like, she uses a big canning boiling system, too, you know, where you just boil the jars up or whatever. I'm sorry, why we need to can if there's a disaster? Is there disaster coming? Well, I don't know about you, but I live in an area that the power goes out pretty regularly, like a lot. And if you ever had a freezer full of food that had gone bad, you would think, man, I wish I had this canned as opposed to frozen. So it doesn't even take like a real major natural disaster or, you know, any kind of disaster. It could just take a mild one. Just the power going out is enough, right? So understanding that if you ever came in times in which that you had all of a sudden an issue with food not being available down at the grocery store, you might be pretty concerned about what it is that you can do to secure your food. And if you can go out there and all of a sudden acquire a bunch of food, but have no way of dealing with it, then you're screwed, right? But if you say, oh man, we're in a desperate situation, we don't know what's going on, we have access to a lot of food right now, but we don't have any place to freeze it or deal with it. If you can't can it, then what are you going to do? Like, I mean, canning it and storing it is by far, like, you don't have to use any other energy after that. It is, in my opinion, probably the number one most survival skill that you could have considering our modern day and age. You know, I mean, there's hunting skills and trapping skills and all kinds of skills, but to preserve food in a way that then not only do you not require any kind of external power for it, but then don't need any continuous power to keep it, that's pretty cool, right? And I don't know anything else like it as far as a skill like that to have that it would be as important as that would be. Yeah. All right. Everyone should know how to can goods and smoke proteins. It's a must for long term. Yeah, absolutely. Like I agree totally with that. In fact, I was playing around with the charcoal Weber. Like I have a smoker. Like I have a Traeger that my parents had given me a while back when we got the house, and it's a wonderful machine. It does a great job, you know, smoking meats, but I like doing things very old school and natural. I have a bunch of barbecues because they're just fun to have, and so I kind of collect them over the years, and so I have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 different grills that I can cook on. And they're all different. Some propane, some are charcoal, some are, you know, just kind of, you know, traveling kind of grills or whatever if I want to take them somewhere. But by far, my favorite one is the old school 22-inch round Weber kettle grill. There's nothing that beats it. It is by far the best cooking apparatus for outdoor cooking. You just can't beat it, you know? And so it does everything. It's so easy. It's so awesome. It does a great job. and I like to use that to even smoke meat on. And you know, all the fancy machines and everything else, they're not as cool, right? Being able to use something that is as primitive and works as well as that, why else do you need anything? Like all the rest of the grills, I feel, even as fancy as they are obsolete to that Weber 22-inch kettle. It's just like you can't beat it, you know. And it's all falling apart and broken. And I paid like, that one, the original one I got used at a yard sale for $25, and I used it for like 20 years. And then the next one I think somebody actually gave to me because one of the legs was bent. So I took one of the legs off of the old one and put it on there. And so like, yeah, I mean, two 22-inch Weber kettles. I paid $25 way back at a garage sale when I was in my early 20s. And those are the two grills that I've used the most and by far work the best. And they're, that's it. All right. There's a lot of people who are 28 to 32, don't have a career yet. What is the best field for them to get into if they don't know? If they don't know, they might be doomed. Sleeper cell, that is a very difficult question to answer because really ultimately everybody needs to find what it is that drives their ambition, their passion, right? Each and every single one of us has something to contribute to this world, and you can use that to provide yourself with all the abundance that the world has, right? Your natural state of being is being provided with lots of abundance. And I don't know if people realize that, but because of the mindsets that we were growing up, like basically the conditioning, we are victims of our situation. We are victim of our circumstances and our upbringing, right? Which gave us and pushed us into a scarcity mindset that makes it very difficult to have the world's abundance flying towards you. Understanding that each and every single person has something that's within them that they can deliver to the world. Like there is usefulness within every single person, and if they find that passion that's within them that they can provide to the world will just naturally provide to them. It's like it's almost as if it can't help but to go that way, all right? But because most of us end up living in a scarcity mindset and almost like a victim mentality of, hey, I'm in a position in which that I am controlled. I'm in a position in which that I am deprived. I am in a position in which that I do not, I don't get the same fair share. I'm in a position like most people have this internal feeling. And when you have that internal feeling, that's exactly what you get, right? Because the universe is matching what it is that you're feeling, thinking and feeling. So when you think and feel in abundance, then abundance just naturally flows around you, and it just becomes like available to you. You don't even like you almost like you don't even know how or why it's occurring. And that's like the natural state of being for somebody who has that mindset. They don't even think about it after a while. I almost like, and you can relate this to just about anything in life. It doesn't matter if it's money or relationships or careers or jobs. It doesn't matter, right? It's all the same thing essentially, right? And I think about it personally from like the idea of like having 140,000 YouTube subscribers. Now, when I started this channel, I didn't even think I would have 100 subscribers, let alone 100,000 subscribers or 140,000 subscribers. Like to me, that's just insane. Like, holy crap, how did it ever get to this big? But I don't think about what it is as a like the feeling of having 140,000 subscribers. It is. It's like I don't even know what that feeling would be like. Now, I kind of understood what it was like to not have 140,000 subscribers, and I kind of know what it would feel like to not have it now, but I don't necessarily know what it's like to have it because it was just kind of this naturally occurring thing that I wasn't really expecting or anticipate to occur. And so therefore, once I got there, I didn't think about the feeling of it. It was just there. Now, again, somebody who doesn't have a YouTube following or a social media following or anything like that, they might think, man, what would it feel like to have 140,000 subscribers? Oh my gosh, it would be so cool to have 140,000 subscribers, right? And then they live in this like, I want, I need, I wish I could have, I'm going to, do this. Instead of just being the YouTuber or being that Instagram person, whatever. I don't know what they do on Instagram, right? Because I don't really do Instagram. But, you know, but as far as YouTube, instead of just being the YouTuber and just let the rest of it naturally occur, right? You don't go for 140,000 subscribers. You go to be a YouTuber who can have 140,000 subscribers, right? That's the difference. Like you take on the energy of being what it is, not what it would be like to feel that way, right? You feel the internal, like, what would it be like to be a YouTuber? How would a YouTuber feel? A YouTuber would feel like they need to put out a video a couple of times a week. They need to come up with the content. They need to stuff. You know, they think about the stuff that would go into the production of the video itself and the production of the channel, but they don't think, okay, how do I get 140,000 subscribers? Nope, can't do it that way. It won't work. What you have to do is think, I'm really good at fishing and I need to share my ideas of how it is to fish and the lures that I use and the timings and the places and the seasons and all the other stuff and discuss all this stuff down. And by providing this information, naturally occurring benefit and abundance will flow because of that. Right? And it's not necessarily just on YouTube. It can be in anything. It can be in anything out there, right? And that's what's most amazing about understanding it from that level, is that once you have, you know, moved into just being it, just being it will naturally have the world being it for you. Like, you know, you won't even think about it anymore. Again, like, I don't think about what is the feeling of having 140,000 subscribers. I think about what it is to have a YouTube channel with 140,000 subscribers and what it is that I need to do on my channel to get the next video out. I don't think about what it is I need to do to get more subscribers. This is not the way I go about it. Like, there might be times and I think, okay, how do I change this channel around a little bit to maybe get the cash flow to start moving towards me by the information that I provide? That's where the channel membership come in. I'm still pushing. In fact, it inspired me to do better videos for the membership, right? Like, it actually, when I started this membership, it's like, oh my crap. Like, I'm not just asking them to watch the video. I'm asking them to pay. Now I'm going to provide for that. Like, if I am asking you to provide money to join the channel, well, then I have to provide a good video for that. And this is where it inspired me. It was like, man, break down these speeches in a more profound way so that people can internalize them. That's the value for $1 that you can give them. $1 a month and in sharing this in what I feel is a very deep, intense discussion about how monetary policy truly operates. And by doing that, by sharing that, it benefits me in the long run. Right? It's $1 a month. Like, if I wanted to make money at it, I would have made it $10 a month or $20 a month or 50 or 100 or whatever. I did it at $1 just because I wanted to have something that had some sort of cash flow to it that I could attempt to sell, so that I could try and benefit not only the channel, but then the people, give them value for their money, right? That was it. That was my whole goal. Like, insignificant amount of money. I didn't care about the money. The money part of it wasn't important to me. It was the sharing of the idea and building up of the membership. And I have that up over 800 members to the channel. At times it's been over 900. I have to thank those individuals who have purchased and gifted memberships to all the other people out there who are become members of the channel. Now, not everybody is going to stay a member to the channel. I get it, right? So that channel membership is going to fluctuate quite a bit on an account of how many people have been gifted a membership and choose not to continue, and then how many people are finding the benefit within the channel and continue to be a member of it. It's super good stuff. Like, I really honestly feel like if you are to go through all the membership videos, and there's a few of them, there's quite a few, right? And really internalize that information, you would see all the economy in a much, much different light. Like, already most people who follow my channel regularly got all the information that's in those membership only videos. But if you were to go through that few concentration of them that we have, it'll get you caught up to date fairly quickly, you know. All right, let's go check out this other super chat. We got Ben Affleck at $1.99. Can you talk about the yield curve uninversion? Yeah, this is a little bit different from what I would feel is going to be a typical inverted, uninverted yield curve operation to the economy, like how this would typically impact the economy when you have an inversion and then an uninversion. I don't think the things, those same reactions or same responses within the economy, I don't think they're going to be as prevalent as they once were. Like a lot of things within the economy are now obscured from the traditional forms of how we used to think about it. Like you think about it, even the idea of the Federal Reserve and the adjustment of interest rates, that's not really the effective tool, right? The communication about it is the effective tool, but nobody knows that. So knowing that there's a very strange obscurity that is now occurring within the economy, looking at things like the inverted yield curve or the uninverting of it may not have the same tail as what we had told in the past. So for those of you who don't know what the inversion of the yield curve is, just like any loan out there that you would typically go and get, if you take out a short-term loan, you're going to have a lesser interest rate than if you take out a long-term loan, right? So 15-year loan, 15-year mortgage has a lesser interest rate than a 30-year mortgage. U.S. bonds are no different. You have a short-term bond, generally the yield on the bond of a short term is going to be less than that of a longer-term bond, which would have a much higher yield to it, right? So again, like if you were borrowing money short term, it would be a lesser interest rate. If you were lending out your money short term, there would be a lesser interest rate to it. Longer term, you demand, longer term has risk, and with risk comes reward, and you ask for a higher return on that. So again, this is typical. So as you go out on the maturity level of the bonds, right, the bond market, you got the short term at a low interest rate and then long term at a higher interest rate. That's a typical steepening of the yield curve, and that would be normal, right? Now, if you have a situation in which that the short-term economic environment is incredibly concerning, right? Meaning that people do not want to tie their money up for the short term because either they're worried about economic downturn, they're worried about, something, then they're going to demand a higher rate for their cash in the short term. So what you'll end up seeing is the short-term interest rates rising during that time. So during times of concern, especially when it comes to like short-term inflationary pressures, right? They're going to ask because, like, hey, man, I'm going to lose my purchasing power. If I'm going to let you hold my money for a short term, I want to be rewarded for the fact that I'm going to lose my purchasing power over time. So you're going to have to pay me a higher interest rate to make up for the fact that we're going to have inflation and I need to make a little bit of profit. So this is the short-term concern that starts driving up the yields on the short-term interest rates. So when the yields rise on the short-term interest rates, you might find that all of a sudden those short-term yields are now higher than the longer-term ones. So this is the inversion of the yield curve. And that typically is a major sign of troublesome futures. Like not future stock, future, concepts coming to the future economy, right? This is like for the markets. So the investors are looking at that saying, I am not going to tie my money up in the short term. We got inflation, we got problems, we got issues. You're going to have to give me a higher return on that. And so the yields will begin to rise to attract the bond investors. So this is the signal that it's happening. It doesn't mean that it's happened. It's the signal that it's happening. Okay. So typically when you see the recession kick in, it's when the bond market has uninverted. Now, when it uninverts, almost always is because the Federal Reserve, and I'm not saying always. In fact, I'm just going to say it like this. When you see the bond market uninvert and it leads into a recession, it's because the Federal Reserve is usually going into a stimulus program, right? So now they're stepping up efforts to try and provide short-term stability to households and businesses, which means interest rates come down for them to borrow money to support that households and businesses. So when the Federal Reserve is stepping up efforts, they will generally do it in the short-term yields, right? The short-term bond market, which would then drive down the yields on those particular assets, which is them trying to deal with the fact that there is a slowdown in the economy and triggers the recessionary pressure, right? It's not the trigger that does it, it's just the event that occurs after that. So does all that kind of make sense? However, we're not in that same situation anymore. We've had an incredibly long uninverted yield or inverted yield curve that should have been like, predicting that we were going to have a downturn in the economy. Everybody is anticipating a recession coming, but yet very few people really think about the fact that the recession may have been bailed out already, like during the pandemic. And that was something that I have been saying for a long time, that this may very well be a recessionless recession. Like I've said that so many times on this channel. And people keep wondering, how come we're not facing this recession? How come we're not going into recession? This is like, because it was already pre-bailed out. Like you think about it, if unemployment doesn't rise significantly, right? What is the worst part of a recession? Everybody loses their job and the corporations get bailed out. That's the two worst things about a recession. Because, I mean, just look at it. Everybody gets pissed off at the government, at Congress or whatever, for bailing out all these fat cat corporations. They get their golden parachutes. Meanwhile, we're all losing our jobs. So that's the two worst parts of a recession. Well, what if it doesn't occur? Right? What if unemployment doesn't rise significantly? Well, that's one part of the worst part of the recession, is the unemployment rising. Well, if it doesn't happen significantly, well, then 50% of the problem is dealt with. And what if the corporations had already been bailed out and they are allowing the zombies to fail, meaning they're not going to bail out corporations, they're just going to allow them to fail like they are doing. Right? So now again, the worst part of a recession, the unemployment rising significantly and the bailing out of the corporations, isn't happening. So we very well could be going through a recessionless recession that was pre-bailed out during the pandemic, with special purpose vehicles and corporate debt lending facilities providing all the funding for corporate debt to gorge on low interest rates. It was set up for them, like practically set up for them. And the incredibly tight labor market that occurred from it has left unemployment historically low, even still today, even with all the layoffs, even with all the crap that's going on within the economy. Now, give it time. Will it change? Sure, it could be. But at this point, what are we facing? What do we see? We are seeing a recessionless recession. I called it out. Like, you can probably Google that into your search engine and find my videos. All right, let's move on. We've been in a recession for a while now. Yeah. All right. The Soviet Union did most of the work of closing out World War II. Hey, Brody, what's happening? All right. Hitting like will get more people in here, and that means more interesting questions. That's right. And, you guys, I mean, I love the conversations that you guys have during it. It's like I'm just kind of babbling in the background there, and you guys are having these great conversations that are going on, and I love that. All right. 3,200 sent to help with the car drudgery? Huh. Whoa, what's that? All right, yeah, definitely go hit the like button. We got 169 likes with 300 people watching. Go hit that like button. We'll see if we can get it up to 200 likes, and I don't know, let's see if we can get 400 people watching. That'd be awesome. I have the trees outside in all 10 acres here. I grow some 300-pound pumpkins. That's kind of fun. Yeah, that would be fun. I can imagine doing that. Bro, I don't know who, but you are definitely a shield for somebody, for groups. If somebody is within the United States government. Sorry, but that's just what I believe. You're cool people, though. Huh. All right, then they show you that high car note rate of 14.9. They will reevaluate the dollar in term of gold is our best case scenario. Probably will scare us into new normal, though. They will reevaluate the dollar in term of gold. Like, go back to a gold standard? I doubt it. We would suffer a misery and poverty almost instantaneously if we went back to a gold standard. We just simply don't produce enough and manufacture enough to support our way of life. So therefore, we would have to export all our gold to support our way of life, which would mean that we would probably be broke in poverty by the end of the month. Because we don't produce enough. Right? It's only a recession. List recession. You have to define recession. All right. Well, that's just the thing. What is it? 2 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, I mean, does that define a recession? I mean, to me, a recession is when everybody loses their job and the corporations get bailed out. That's the recession, right? Other than that, who cares? Like, if you don't lose your job, why do you care? A recession is only it's only a recession if your neighbor loses their job, but it's a depression if you lose your job, right? So if you hold your job, there's no recession. Historically low unemployment. It's weird to think even. Can you see the amount of unlikes? No, I can't. And maybe your analytics or something. I haven't figured that out. Like, I actually kind of bummed. I wish, I would like to see the unlikes. I would like to know how many people disapprove of some of the videos that I have done. And not to mention, it's all engagement. So, unliking the video, hitting the thumbs down is just as important as hitting the thumbs up. I mean, in my opinion, it's all engagements. And so, the YouTube algorithm is cool with it no matter which way you go. And, for me, I would be more approving of it, but I don't know why they took away the thumbs down. They should have left it. Or at least the counter on it, Unemployment is at 4.1 right now. Natural rate is 4.4, but they are not counting all the unemployment. Okay, Ironwood, that's actually a really good thing to bring up. That is a really, really, the natural rate of employment. Do you know what that is? Right? That is the rate that neither accommodates nor restricts the economy. Isn't that interesting to think about? Because most people are thinking about the neutral interest rate, which is the interest rate that neither accommodates nor restricts the economy. But as we have learned from the Federal Reserve and how they conduct themselves, they actually try to increase and decrease inflation by the amount of employment that has taken place within the economy. If you have a lot of people working, then you have a lot of people earning money and consuming. When you have a lot of people consuming, you have the supply-demand imbalances and you have prices increasing. When you have a lot of people who are losing their job or are on unemployment or less labor taking place within the economy, less people working, less people spending money, less consuming happening, and then you have the supply-demand rebalancing itself, and generally you'll see prices coming down or stop going up. And that's how the Federal Reserve would typically operate. So they know that there is a rate of employment that is neutral or natural rate of employment. Now, when you say it's at 4.4%, I do question that, right? Only in the sense that when they had unemployment historically low, it still failed to produce the inflationary scenario that we were looking for. So the natural rate of employment that would stimulate the economy has to be less than the historically low employment that we had already experienced, which I believe was under 4.4 or 5, whatever. It was probably down around 3. What was it, 3.5? I forget. What was the historically low unemployment rate, right? It was around 3 or something percent. Still didn't produce the inflationary scenario. So that means the natural rate of employment must be below that, right? I know that understanding the Federal Reserve and the government statistics and all that number may be very obscured and stuff, but just understanding that the inflationary scenario was failed to be produced from the employment's historically low number, and that was at less than 4%, then we have to think that the natural rate of employment must be below that, or the natural rate of unemployment, or however you want to look at it. Right? So it's in, how do I say it? It's not necessarily the historic number, but where that number is positioned to the ability to stimulate the economy, because that natural rate or the neutral rate, that changes over time. And nobody knows exactly where that's at. So again, this is one of the reasons why they were failing to produce the inflationary scenario that they were looking for, because they couldn't get the unemployment or the employment, or however you want to look at it, to be significant enough to drop below the neutral rate and to stimulate the economy. Workers not making enough to spur higher inflation. Maybe, okay, never thought about that. Yeah, and I'm not saying that, I'm not even saying that all that is right. I'm just saying, according to the neutral rates and things that I've seen, the Federal Reserve was having a hell of a time trying to stimulate the economy through the lowering of interest rates, even though what they had low unemployment, which would typically have created the inflationary scenario. They realized the only thing that could change the inflationary scenario was the inflation expectations. That's it. Right? Yeah. Because let me see if they have it in here. See, here we go. Okay. Because this is what John Williams had to say about it, right? The downward shift in inflation expectation has a second round effect on real interest rates, the economy, and inflation. When policy is constrained by the effective lower bound, that means when the Fed funds rate hits zero, right? It's constrained by the effective lower bound. They can't go any lower than zero. That's it. They're done. The downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates, right? If you bring your inflation expectations down, you will raise the real interest rates. Here, let me explain that real quick. If you're an investor who anticipates on getting a 2% return, but also is experiencing a 1% inflation expectation, the real interest rate that you will get at the end of your investment is 1%, right? After inflation, you will have a 1% return. Now, if you have an investor who is anticipating a 2% return and you take the inflation expectation to zero, you will raise the real interest rate to 2%, what the investor anticipates getting after inflation. Right? So the real interest rate is the rate that the investor anticipates getting after inflation. The downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus. It diminishes. If you have a low expectation of inflation, it will lower the degree of monetary stimulus, right? Making the downturn worse and reducing inflation even more. Right? Even in times when policy is not constrained, the expectations of below target inflation in the future affects current decisions, right? Your decisions that you're going to make. Everything that you do in the future. Oh, inflation is going to destroy us all. Right? Putting additional downward pressure on inflation. In other words, monetary policy is always swimming upstream, fighting a current of too low of inflation expectations that interferes with achieving the inflation target. Interferes with achieving the target inflation rate. Again, that was their problem. They solved these problems. Inflation expectation being elevated and everybody thinking that there was going to be a hyperinflation scenario and thought for sure the Federal Reserve had lost control benefited the Federal Reserve. That mindset, that attitude, all the subconscious decisions that you made based on having that idea. Oh, hey, what's up, Lunas? You want to come up here? Whoop. Okay, careful. Don't spill. There you go. Good girl.
Got the dog.
Yeah. Can you say hi? Can you put your head up here? Come on. Oops, she's kind of a little nervous here. She's feeling a little out of place.
Yeah.
There she goes. Can you say hi to Lunas? She's such a good girl, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All
Alright, coming down, Luna. Come here.
right. All right. Go on. All right. Moving on way down. Okay. Already being done, by the way. Okay. The cars in dealership parking lots, how long they're sitting there, the type of buildings being built. Why would corps pay workers well when they know government will pick up the slack? Now, you haven't seen the price of food in Hawaii. You think you pay a lot for food? That's a joke. Try shopping in Hilo, Hawaii. I love the dog. I love dogs. Yeah, me too. Doggy. All right, let's cruise up here. If people want fish delivered to their home, I'll be willing to go fish and deliver it to the customer to get ahead. Well, I don't think you can legally do well, never mind. I mean, if you're a commercial fisherman, then that's one thing. But all right, Walmart will be going back to not using self-checkouts. Chicken Life. I've been seeing values drop on Kelly Blue Book, price down on Facebook Marketplace. What have you been seeing? Where's Chicken Life? If you can truly subscribe to the Cantillon effect, or as I like to think about it, trickle-down economics, what will be the next disturbance to inject wealth into the economy? That's a really good question, because I think that's actually going to come in the idea of like the UBI, MMT kind of stuff. Like ultimately, you're going to have to figure out a way to, if the United States is to continue to operate in the fashion that we are heading down, what you're going to have is the world producing and us consuming. That's it. Like that's the only direction it can go, because ultimately we need to consume the production of the world so that they continue to buy our bonds, right? We borrow money from them and then we buy their stuff. And that's how it's been going down for quite some time. And this is the reason why we have such a high standard of living here, is because we don't really have to work to get it. We just, we don't have to really produce much. We just keep borrowing money into the future to do it. Now, if we want that system to continue, whether we want to or not, and if we expect that, there we go. If we expect that that system to continue, right, then what's going to have to happen is that we're going to have to be able to consume the production of the world, and the world wants to continue to produce and produce a lot. Now, all of them want to produce, and none of them want to be they all want to be an exporter. They don't necessarily want to be an importer. Of course, you want to import the things that you don't have, but you want to export a hell of a lot more than what you are importing, because when you're exporting more than you're importing, you're earning money, right? So this is how they get new money in. We get new money in by borrowing it. So they work and produce and save. We go deeper into debt and spend lavishly, right? And so this is just the way it goes down. If we want this to continue, we have to be continuous consumers, which means that the United States has to figure out a way to produce a consumer. That's what we produce here, is consumers. And now, if you don't have enough in your labor price, like if you can't pay the labor enough to consume, then you're going to have to figure out a way to give them money to consume, right? Because like their labor isn't going to cut it. They spend all their money on houses, they spend all their money on cars, and then that's it, their health, and they're done. They don't have any more money to spend. So this is making it very difficult for them to then have, like, how do you have this continuous consumption taking place going into the United States if the labor itself can't go and buy the production of the world in order to conduct that sort of systematic event, right? So now you have to have this labor with enough money to buy the production of the world. How do you do that, right? Well, you just literally hand it to them, and I'm like, here, go buy shit, right? Go buy stuff. And so as you're buying stuff, that production comes in, we then get to sell that stuff to each other, and so goes on our consumption economy, right? Now, again, like if you can figure out a way that the labor itself could produce enough production and savings to buy that production of the world, which is contradictory, right? Like either you're a producer saver, which means that you're exporting more than you're importing, or you're a consumer debtor, which means that you're importing more than you're consuming or than you're producing. So we're the importing consuming nation that's going into debt. And if we want that system to continue, not saying if we want to, if we expect that system to continue, then that's what it's going to have to be, is we have to figure out how to either get our labor to pay more, which isn't going to happen, right? Because you have to be a producer saver for it to pay more. We're not that. Or you just have to inject money directly to them and say, here, just go spend this money. Right? And so this is really where I think that it's going to end up going, is that it's going to be more in a UBI sort of fashion in order to literally save the economy and keep money velocity going. Like trying to find, like once the inflationary scenario runs out and everybody's inflation expectation goes back down to normal, how are they going to get the inflation back? Like, are they going to have another pandemic and severing of the supply chain? Is that what they're going to do? Probably not, right? That probably won't go over very well. However, all this UBI testing theory idea that's been taking place is getting people very accustomed to the idea of just having money literally handed to them so they can go spend it on whatever they want. And that very well could end up being the case in order to keep the money flow going the way it is. And I'm not expecting good times. What you're going to end up finding is that the UBI will not be anything of an advantage to your life. Like, the condition of your life will not be any different now than it was even after the UBI. It will find equilibrium, right? You will find it. Equilibrium will be found. However, at that point, since the system will have been established and made, you will have governmental powers that will then basically be dangling the carrot out in front of you. You know, how far, you know, like, hey, do you want more UBI or you want less UBI, blah, 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 right? And they'll start, you know, conducting persuasive, you know, political environment because of that. And everybody will be forced to deal with it, because if they don't have that UBI, they'll literally go homeless. You know? And so it will be a forced, like, outcome upon the people, and it will, like, lock them into a slave system. It won't have any other choice, because if you don't do it, then the whole economic system will collapse anyway. So it's like you don't have any other choice. You'll have to accept this UBI, or, like, you won't have any other choice. It's just, that's it. You'll just have to accept it, you know, or be homeless, I guess. I don't know. UBI is socialism. If the United States goes down this route, communism will be next. Be careful. I wouldn't say be careful. Be aware that it's occurring. Like communism, like social communistic United States, that's already here. Nobody votes this way, right? I mean, this is the Constitution of the United States right here. Do you think anybody votes with this in mind? Anybody? Like, even the people you know, your friends and family, anybody, like a single person, right? The United States is not like, the United States is a constitutional republic. Nobody knows it. Nobody knows what that means, and it doesn't exist if you don't know. If it's not internalized like we internalize this monetary policy, then it doesn't exist. You will not subconsciously vote. Like, subconsciously, you will fail to vote for the right person because you don't know what the rights are. You don't know what the Constitution is. And I'm not trying to chew you out personally. I'm just saying that 99% of the people that I come across have no idea what the Bill of Rights is. Freedom of speech and right to bear arms, and then they're pretty much lost after that. They don't know any others. Right? Right to remain silent, maybe? They have no idea what their rights are, and yet they're telling me that I have no clue about, like, who would be the appropriate president, but yet they're telling me that I should vote for somebody who doesn't consider this? Are you serious? Like, I don't know how the hell people are considering me some kind of, like, evil problem to the government by not picking the appropriate one of these two people. Neither one of them give a shit about this thing. Right? So, I mean, like, yeah, okay, whatever. You know, I mean, I'll sit here and I'll be with my Constitution, understanding what it is that my personal freedoms and rights are, regardless of the government. Right? This tells them what my rights are. They don't tell me what my rights are. Right? This is the difference with inside of it, and most people don't know. They just simply just don't know. And it's sad to think, right? But, you know, whatever. It's like, you know, we live in a socialistic, communistic nation because nobody knows about this thing. You know? And I mean, it's available. It's available to each and every one of us. If we were to, every single person internalizes this information, I guarantee you, the economy, this government, all this other stuff would not be looking the way it is today. People tell me I have TDS, whatever the hell that's mean. It's a cop-out statement. You might as well be using a term like mansplaining or something. All right. Angry capitalist. Nice to see you here. $5. Could you give your thoughts on opposing scenarios? Insular, isolated, U.S., or NAFTA? What do you think would look like? I'm not sure. I'm sorry. Am I missing the question? Could you give your thoughts on the opposing scenarios, isolated, U.S. or NAFTA? would look like. You know, I don't think about the government creating the environment. The government is reacting to it. All the tariffs, all the laws, all the issues that we are finding taking place with like taxes and subsidies and, you know, all these dealings with to try and figure out how to conduct trade is all because of the economic forces that are underlying, right? The government is reacting to those things. We just have to understand, like from the Cantillon effect, it's pretty simple. Like if you just think about the 7 steps, when you have all the government stepping up to try and figure out how it is that they are going to do trade with the rest of the world and continue to conduct themselves in the way they are reacting to the fact that the Cantillon effect was taking place. They were losing their manufacturing base due to the higher standard of living. Simple as that, right? Now the complication starts to come in is by how they are dealing with that fact. Like that gets very complicated. That can be very like, you know, and you can go on all day about how this impacts all kinds of stuff, but they're reacting to the economic force that was at hand. That's what was going on. They didn't create the situation. The situation created itself when we have industrious people who are working hard trying to figure out how to have a better life. That's the natural consequences of producing and saving. Buying into luxuries. Problem comes from that. There's like, I don't try to complicate it any further than that. I don't try to reinvent the wheel or try to pinpoint what it is that, you know, again, like whose fault it was or who to blame. It doesn't matter who put the hole in the boat. We have to bail the boat out and get back to shore. That's the problem. So each and every single one of us, I kind of know how to swim, but not everybody knows how to swim. So sometimes we have to be on the boat together in order to get everybody back to safety, right? Now, each and every person could be like, hey, man, I'll stick it out with you as long as I can, but I know how to swim. And once this boat leaves my feet, I'm swimming. Right? Like I got my own plan, but I'll stick it out here with you and I'll try and bail out this boat. What do you want to do? I don't want to blame people because I'm not, and blaming is not fun and it doesn't work and it doesn't do anything. So I'm not going to do that part. But I will help you bail out the boat if you have an idea on how to do that. Now, my idea is really painful and is going to take generations. So meaning that the decisions that you make today are going to be impacting the lives of people who don't even exist yet. Right? So take that into mind, that if you want my help with it, the painful experience is going to be impacting people who don't even exist yet. And now I'm willing to do that for the fact that we are going to have a better life existing here in this country because of it, but nobody's going to be on board. Nobody's going to be on board with that. So what's your idea? Right? My idea is going to be really painful experience from it. And I'm not expecting anybody to fall in line with it. I do expect this boat to eventually leave my feet and I'm going to have to be swimming on my own. But if you got an idea on how to save it, like let's bail it out. Let's figure it out, man. Let's go UBI. Let's go figure out, cryptocurrencies. Let's go do the thing, right? I mean, my anticipation of it working is pretty slim to none in the end scheme of it, because I understand the economic forces that are underlying is eventually going to leave us in poverty and misery. I realize that. It's one of the reasons why I am such a fan of silver and gold and cryptocurrencies, is because it's outside of that third party claim. But you got to understand that's the situation that we're in, And there's like all the government doesn't create this problem. The problem comes from actually producing and saving and moving into luxuries. That's the problem. Right? And I don't like the idea behind it, but it's not for me to like or not like. It's just the case. It's just the is, right? Human nature says, once I have worked hard, I want to enjoy my hard work production of savings and everything else. There's no reason to think that would be any different for any other human being out there. But that exact movement is the destruction of the economy within itself, right? And it's just a matter of time. It happens time and time and time again throughout history. There's plenty of evidence of it occurring today in many nations, in this nation, people's individuals, economies, corporations, companies, municipalities, everywhere. It all faces the same thing. Yeah. I don't think I'll see 70. Oh man, bro, don't say that. Trump is a wrecking ball taking all this evil down. I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't agree because here's the thing. Donald Trump made his fortune using the system of a debt-based currency. Think about that for just a second. He took advantage of this situation to propel him up to the highest levels. Why would he destroy that? That doesn't make sense. Never in the history of time would somebody go like, man, I've achieved greatness. Let's destroy this greatness. Does that sound right? You know, no. He loves the central banking system because that is what gave him the ability to elevate himself to the upper levels. No way in the world would he knock himself off that pedestal, which is exactly what would happen if they were to destroy the evilness of the Federal Reserve. It would knock his knees out from under him. Nope, not going to happen. He is going to maintain, lock in the security of a central banking system and make sure that it doesn't go anywhere because that is the exact thing that elevated him to the levels that he is at. Why would he destroy it? Doesn't make any sense, right? And now I'm not blaming him for it. He figured it out. Dude, great job, man. You know, great job. You did a wonderful job of it. But to believe that you are going to do things that's going to be for my benefit, I have very little expectations of that. Very little. Now, do I have an expectation that he would take advantage of a situation in order to elevate him and his crony buddies up even further? Hell yeah. I do have an expectation of that, and that's exactly what I think will occur. And I have very little doubt in my mind about it. And I don't have a problem with it because I can't have a problem with that expectation because I know it's going to take place. What am I going to do about it? Nothing. I can't do anything about it. Buy gold and silver and don't put your money in the bank. Okay, great. Did that for a long time. You know how hard that was on my life? I'm not going to do it again. All right? I understand these evil people out there are going to separate themselves from us because that's the situation we are now in. There's nothing we can do about that. If you want to do something about it, get all your money out of the bank. Spend all your money into gold and silver and cryptos. Don't carry a cell phone. Don't participate in tax payments. Don't participate in business. Go and live a homeless life, and you will have a situation in which that men won't govern you because you don't have anything to govern. Sounds like a great existence. It's an unfortunate consequence of the time that we are in. I would love to do something about it. What do you want to do? What do you want to do, man? I mean, I'm down for it. I'm down for anything, man. I got a constitution in hand, right? I'm ready. Let's do it. What do you want to do? You know, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you're going to do. And there's nothing he's going to do or she's going to do or anybody else out there. The only thing that can be done is what you're going to do. You look at the situation for what it is, understand, yeah, those evil bastards are going to continue to do this, and there's really nothing I can do about it, because even if I vote for this person who says they're going to do something about it, they don't. They don't. They just, they just change it around and make it better for them and their cronies and whatever, but they don't do it for you. None of them have. Not like all the horse shit that they talk about doesn't benefit you any. This thing, and your own thoughts and understandings of the situation and what it is that you need to do is the only thing that will benefit you. Yeah. Go and vote for the right person. Neither one of those people impress me. They don't impress me. Like, I'm not impressed. Right? And they're like, hey, you got to vote for one of these people. And I'm like, can we discuss this a little bit? Can we discuss like what it is that's going on with the neutral interest rate and the lower bound of zero and the inflation expectations? I mean, since you want to be in control of the Federal Reserve and the central banking system, maybe we can have a little bit of discussion about that. Maybe we can discuss this thing a little bit. No, you don't want to talk about any of that stuff? Okay, never mind. I don't know why I would. Go ahead, flip a coin, man. I don't give a shit. I mean. Wayne Smith, $2. Boom. All right. Uneducated Geologist. Thank you for the $2, man. I appreciate you guys. I don't mean to rant and go off like that, but, who do we have in here? Thank you for joining the channel, man. Or no, for the super sticker. Is that what that is? Yeah, right on. All right. Live chats. Here we go. Humans will do what they love, whatever that is. They make time for what they love. That's right. You vote don't you vote don't count. Ever hear of the Electoral College? Okay. So here's the problem that I have with voting, right? Is that I vote in Oregon, which makes it very difficult to then find that your vote is being counted when it's a mail-in ballot, right? You have 3 electoral votes in Oregon, and we're a mail-in ballot, which means that we're the last ones to count and declare how we voted. By the time we do that, the president has already accepted the outcome, right? Whether they won or lost or whatever, it's like it's already been declared. And then here comes Oregon. It's like, oh, hey, by the way, we got our votes. And they're like, oh, yeah, cute little Oregon with your 3 votes. What'd you guys do? Oh, that was nice. No change to anything out there, regardless of how you voted. Right? So that's the way I feel. It's just like, wait a minute, man. My vote doesn't really mean anything because my vote hasn't even been counted and the president's already been elected. Cool. Yeah, that's real cool. Yeah, I'm glad I did that. You know. It's like being 100 pounds overweight. It sucks and it hurts getting back to a normal weight. Well said, Space Cowboy. What does Space Cowboy say? All right, Yui, I've spent a couple of hours looking for the video you made years ago about the statistics the government gives out are not accurate due to national security. Can you link the video? Yeah, when somebody, like, I don't know, can probably go grab it real quick. Just type into the video description of my channel, like, you know, when you're searching for the videos, FASB, FASAB 56, legal lies. In fact, if you just Google legal lies or video search YouTube legal lies, you'll probably find it. Because I'm one of the few people who was talking about FASB 56 at the time that they had made that. Like, there was a few YouTubers out there who were talking about it, but I was like one of the few. So, you know, I think it's FASAB, the Federal Account Statistics something Bureau. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but anyway, you'll be able to find it. And it was early. It was like within the first probably 2 years I was making videos. Yeah, legal lies. They can legally lie to you about the numbers for national security reasons, but that's okay because you can still use them for all your stock picks and trades and all that other stuff, and you don't have to worry about that part. So they say. All right. Do you think the jobs report is manipulated so the markets don't freak out via what we just saw? Well, yeah, I think all the numbers are manipulated. So I don't, that part is like, I think that part is like to the point that I'm just going to say it's obvious, right? Not that it is obvious, but I'm just going to say it's obvious because they said that they can manipulate them. So if they can, they probably do. And if they could and do, then they probably are, right? So I'm just assuming that's what they are. They are manipulated numbers, just based off of that. It's not so much about what the number is, but the direction that it's going and by how much. That I find to be a lot more important because I think that's probably going to be a little bit more accurate to the situation. So again, if you're following numbers, if you look to see how much they move and by how much, I think that's going to have a better impression on what's going on in the economy than the actual number comparatively to what it was in the past. Because that, who knows? Who knows what that is? All right. Give to Caesar what belongs to him, especially if he is lending to you. All right. Jobs report and employment is 1,000% manipulated. They revise numbers down 60 days later. Joe has done it for 14 months in a row. Who has? Jeremy, I hear you. I got all my 2 buy stacked, but I need to buy sheathing. Oh, got all the 2x stacked, I see. Yeah, I would get into sheathing quickly. Like, I would get into framing lumber quickly because I don't think there's going to be much room or time before you start seeing the prices elevated. Yeah. I mean, there's still, like, right now, like, I don't think they can get any cheaper. That's what I guess I'm getting at. Like, I don't see them getting any better price than what they are today. You know, they might get a slightly better, but with as much mill curtailment has taken place, even if they were to get better, there's not going to be anything available. You know? So, all right. Why can a China couple cross the border and have kids, and later the kids run for president of the U.S.? Joe Biden couldn't even run a lemonade stand. People think he runs things. Yeah, right? See, again. All right. The one where Jared Berenstein can't even explain how the U.S. economy works. America is a national pride parade right now. It's pretty crazy. Beat stolen green space. If the inflation rate still included housing, it would have surpassed inflation in the 80s, around 20%. Well, yeah, that's why I don't compare. That's why I don't think about the inflation comparatively to what it was in the past. Like, that to me is like, I just don't think about it like that at all, because it's like comparing this Ford Explorer to, like, you know, I don't know, some. It's like, I don't know. I don't even want to come up with an analogy for it. It's just not the same thing anymore. What's more important is what it is that the Federal Reserve is looking for when it comes to the inflation outcome and how that conducts their monetary policy, right? The inflation expectation over time, average inflation, right? That's important. Not what inflation was in the 80s and what it is today. I don't know what can you use that information for? Like, I don't know what you're going to do with that other than prove a point that it says, hey, man, it was different back then than it is today, not only in the way they look at it, but the number itself. And so, therefore, we're comparing two things that aren't even identical anymore. Like, like, I mean, other than declaring it all BS, I mean, that might be, like, part of that argument or something, but I don't know how that's going to be useful information to you to conduct yourself going into the future. Understanding that the Federal Reserve is going for an average inflation rate over time so that, you know, that they can get their monetary policy back into a position in which that the interest rate adjustments actually does something to the economy and can stimulate the economy again. I think that's more important. Like, going for a 2% average inflation rate over time. Let's go check this out. Super chat. Uneducated geologist, $2. Thank you so much. On YouTube, 12 years. You are the first one I've super chatted. Oh, well, thank you so much, uneducated geologist. I really appreciate that, man. It means that I must be doing something right. Yeah. And that's the only thing I can say. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support, man. All right, guys, what are we getting up to? We're at almost 2 hours into this. I'm thinking we're probably going to call it quit at the 2-hour mark. Is there anything else we want to discuss, cover, talk about? Anything you want to hear about as far as the lumber industry, anything like that? If America wants to change, it has to become poor by default. I agree. Like, I don't think people could consciously make the decisions that are going to be appropriate. I don't think they could. Like, the moment that you have a significant savings, you're going to spend it. You're going to spend it. You're going to be like, man, I have been saving for this whole time so I can finally get that thing, that one thing, right? But you get there and you say, I'm not going to get that one thing. I'm going to reinvest this money and I'm going to go back to living in my shack and eating porridge, right? Like eating the oatmeal, eating peanut butter and honey sandwiches. This is like, it's not going to happen. Like, you're going to sit there with, you know, $1 million in investment and live in ratty clothes and, you know, worn out shoes and no heat in the house and living off of gruel, you know, like, no, of course not. Like, nobody's going to do that, but that's what it would take. If you want to fix it, right? We have to do exactly opposite of what it is that we have been doing. And so diving into luxuries, you have to do the exact opposite of that. taking out debt issuance and buying those luxuries? The exact opposite of that. What is it? Producing savings and not buying anything. And nobody's going to do it. All right. Cities can imprison you for being homeless. Yep, that's right. They can now arrest you for camping on the streets. They can arrest you. They're doing it in Portland. Like, it's starting to happen now. And that's just like, it's mind-blowing to think. Like, it's illegal to be poor in this country. You can't do it. So if you're poor and you're living on the streets, you have to accept this little house. You have to accept these. If you don't accept it, you're going to jail, man. All right? You have to accept and be forced into the luxuries. It's weird. Or get arrested for it. Is this really happening? Yeah, this is how the Cantillon effect takes place when you don't have a rebalancing of it. If you can continue to pour new money into the system, this is the results. As you have ever increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor, and then people with inflated egos and inflated wallets think that they can throw money at the problem. Right? Not realizing everything that they're throwing money at is fighting a symptom of the problem. The problem is mental health. The problem is drug addiction. The problem is the fact that a good job sucks. There's nothing that can really do to change any of that. I mean, there's things you can do, but not realistically. Not according to human nature, All right. They be called something different. A name is a label. Okay. Only thing humans have done is allow politicians to take their money. If the yen keeps going up against a dollar, what happens to inflation? I don't know. Like, all this speculation, I mean, if it continues on, yeah, you're going to have issues with it, but I think it's eventually going to find its equilibrium. It's going to find its unwinding. The issues that we were facing is probably going to dissipate, and people won't be talking about it in a couple of months. Maybe it'll get worse. I don't know, right? I mean, only time will tell on it, so... I'm here. Like button has been bruised. We can start now. All righty, all-nighter. That sucks because I'm about ready to end the stream, brother. Lumber stocks, yeah. I don't know. Like, again, somebody had kind of mentioned in there all the layoffs that are taking place and the mill curtailments and something has like lowered the output cost of the mills, which gives their stock prices a better position. I don't know. Like, I'm not somebody who talks about lumber stocks and, try to figure out how to make money off of it. I've never done that. Like, that was never my thing. I talk about the inventory levels. I talk about the demand side of things. I talk about, where the futures prices are going, but I don't talk about it in a way that is like, here, man, how do you position yourself to make money from it? You go figure that part out. I don't know, right? Like, if you want to make money off of it, I would think, hey, man, buy the lumber cheap and then build your project here in the future because that's going to save you money, right? That's how I think about things. The idea that you can put money towards a particular stock or something with this trade, that's on you, right? So lumber is not inflationary. It will cause deflation, right? I mean, when lumber was at its all-time high, I was I think I was the only person who was not using lumber as an example of an inflationary pressure, and in fact said, don't do that because it's going to go back down to normal, and you're not going to have any excuses why. And you're not going to know why, because you don't blame the money printer for causing the prices to go up. Uh-oh, now what do you do, right? Like, every single economist out there, they all did it. Like, I don't even want to name names, but people who I have mad respect for was saying that lumber prices were up, and it was absolutely due to the fact that the Federal Reserve had increased the money supply. Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. And that was almost every single economist out there was saying that. Not me. I was the only one who was very much saying something different. And saying, don't do that. Don't blame the money printer on this. It's a supply and demand issue, and you are going to see these prices come back down to normal. I couldn't believe how like, I mean, I was so adamant about it, but it was definitely the issue. It was definitely the case. And very much like I know coming into the future, when you see the interest, when the interest rates really do come down and it sparks that builder demand, there's not going to be enough inventory in the system to supply any kind of major demand. And those guys have inelastic demand. They will pay any price for it. You are going to see the lumber prices skyrocket if that is the case. Like, I'm not trying to predict the future. What I'm trying to say is that if those interest rates come down, the pent-up demand coming out of the builders to build, like, they want to build. That's their job. That's what they want to do. That's their producing, right? But if they're not producing because nobody's buying, they're sucking hind tit, and that sucks for them, right? So they want to be out there in the front trying to make their product, trying to get that sold. And if there's a lower interest rate coming into the future, that is going to spark their demand. It's just like, and the longer this goes on where they're not building as much or frustrated with the buyer traffic or whatever it is, the more likely the demand is going to skyrocket. Right? I mean, it's just, to me, it just seems very clear, right, that this is what is occurring. Now, I know when we get there and the prices skyrocket, they're going to be like, oh, well, this is left over from Biden's fault, or they're going to blame it on Trump, or they're going to blame it on, manipulation of something, greedy bastards or whatever out there. They're going to have all kinds of excuses and reasons, and it's all going to be wrong. Every one of them are going to be wrong. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. They may all be right, Maybe, I guess if I'm the only one, maybe I'm the one who's wrong, right? All right. What caused they printed all that money? What? That doesn't make any sense. What caused they printed all that money? All right. Cobra, one word, demand. Lack of demand is what keeps oil prices down. Yeah. Or overproduction. Yeah. All right, cruising down here. Do we want to keep going, guys? What time is it? It's 10:30 right now. All right. I woke up late. Is there going to be a lumber shortage? I believe there is. Well, I mean, as far as shortages compared to what we had experienced in the past, I doubt it's going to be like that. Like, I don't think we're going to be reaching like 1,700 per thousand. I mean, it could, but I think that would be a bit of a stretch to imagine. But I don't see, like, say 800-900 per thousand to be out of the realms of possibility. Like double from where it is today. The world needs more trees, huh? Alright, he just said they were cutting production in oil, so only lack of demand is keeping the oil price down. So why will lumber go up in price? Lumber will go up in price because of the demand coming from the builder side. So right now the builder is very frustrated trying to start a house, and with the anticipation that they would be able to complete that house and sell it for what they could today, right? So if prices go down in the future on homes, the builders aren't excited about building. They're like, I don't want to touch that thing, right? Now, if that's the case, then you're going to have tight inventory levels. Well, tight inventory levels is the reason why the prices are elevated. So this is like the paradox that they are now in. They're very worried about the future and the buyer traffic. And if they're worried about the future and the buyer traffic, they don't want to build. If they don't build, then they don't provide for inventory. If they don't provide for inventory, then the prices stay elevated. And again, the buyer traffic isn't there. So how does this work, right? Well, you got to bring buyer traffic to the table. As soon as you bring buyer traffic to the table, now the builder's like, bam, there you are. That's what I was wanting to see. I'm going to get this house started, and we're going to build this house, and we're going to be able to sell it in the future, knowing that we have a buyer there. Now, the only thing that would concern them is if the prices are going to come down, right? Like, if we start a house today, we want to be able to sell it for what we are anticipating that we could sell it for today, not for a lesser price. That's concerning. So if the prices are dropping, then the builder's probably not going to be there either, right? Because again, they don't want to speculate on a house that's going to be selling for less than what they are projecting it to be. But if the interest rates come down and the buyers are coming to the table, well, now you have supply-demand imbalances because you already have short inventory, and now lower interest rates produces more demand. Right? More buyers come to the table saying, hey, lower interest rates is what I was looking for in order to make my payments. So now you have the buyer back in there, and the builder says, okay, great, now I'm playing my game. All right, so understanding that that could be the situation from it. There is not enough inventory in the system, in my opinion, to handle a significant increase in demand. Now, what would create that demand is the moment that the contractor signs a deal saying, I am going to build this house. That creates inelastic demand. He can't postpone it. He can't postpone his purchase. He's got to go forward. We have to do this. We have to go forward with this project and purchase this lumber. Goes to purchase the lumber, and there's none there. All this mill curtailment and everything that's been happening left a shortage of lumber within the system. But you have all these people who have inelastic demand. They're like, no, I need it regardless. How much is it? How much do I have to pay? How far do I have to go to get it? And this starts driving up the price. Right? Once the price goes up, the mills go, oh, hey, let's produce. But it doesn't fire right up. They can't like just fill the demand overnight. It takes time, right? You got to saw these logs up. They got to go through the kiln drying process. There's only a limited amount of kilns out there to provide for space. So you have a bottlenecking of how much lumber can actually be produced. You can cut down 1 million trees, you can saw them all up, but you can only dry them at a certain speed and space, right? Building like kiln dried lumber is very popular for the new construction industry, and the kilns are only so much volume, and it takes so much time, right? So again, like unless you're building more kilns, you're not going to be able to produce any more lumber than what can be produced. And if it doesn't meet the demand, prices are going to go up. All right, me too, Samuel. I always sleep best the closer I get to the time I'm supposed to wake up. Oh, yeah. Like, I'm supposed to get up at like, I don't know, 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And I will be up at 2 o'clock in the morning, wide awake or whatever. But you start getting around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, especially about 5:30 or 4:30 to 5, right in there. Oh, man, that is the most sound, the most peaceful, the most relaxing, the most enjoyable sleep that you'll ever have, knowing like you fade in and out of that consciousness of sleep, that you have about 15 minutes left before you're going to have to ruin all this good, wonderful sleep and get up. Even though you could have been doing that for hours throughout the night, but you couldn't sleep then. Yep, I know exactly what you're saying. All right, Stephen Kokas, $4.99. What do you think of Trump's argument that energy production could quell inflation? Okay. What is our number one energy? Oil, right? Isn't that like the number one? It's the most, like for everything. So if we just kind of just use that particular one, oil, right? It had reached $150 a barrel, which is ultimately the same price that it had reached back in 2005, like almost 20 years ago. All right. Well, everybody said that high oil prices was going to bleed into the rest of the economy and create an inflationary scenario. And I said high oil prices will curb the demand for oil, therefore creating an abundance of supply, and therefore you would see a dramatic drop in the pricing, and therefore no longer be an inflationary impact into the economy. So what is it that Trump's going to do again? I mean, I don't know what he's doing to do anything different. Like, those guys don't do anything. You do really, like they do stuff. Like, I'm not saying they don't do stuff, but we do the stuff. We're the producers, we're the savers, we're the economy. Those people try to govern that. That's the difference. They don't produce, and they don't produce anything. We do that. We, the ones who are servicing, we're the ones who are producing, we're the ones, right? We're the economy. They try to control that. So we have to exist first, and then they try to manipulate and deal and govern that. That's what's happening here. There's a system that has been created over time to try and continue on with the way of life so that we don't go through suffering through depressions and poverty like we probably should have when we severed ourselves from the gold standard. And because that system has been created, men have figured out how to manipulate that and deal with it in such a way that has elevated themselves to a position in which that, like, I don't even know how to describe it anymore, right? It's beyond belief. But they don't produce anything. We do. We're the economy, right? If it wasn't for us going to work every single day, they would starve. They would have nothing to drive. They would be in misery just like all the rest of us are, right? They don't do anything for you. All right. You don't sell government contracts for drilling or set regulations. Uh-oh. Is there a super chat? I think All Nighter just... Let me go check it out. What did All Nighter just say to me? Didn't I read Stevens? I think I read Stevens, didn't I, All Nighter? Did I get a different one? All Nighter's private messaging me here. Right. Oh, there it is. Okay. What do you think of Trump's argument, energy production, and okay, yeah. Oh, it must have just come in late. Okay, I get it now. All right, the text messages came in a little after that. All right, he will change regulations a little bit, won't change much. No, I mean, he'll come in and give a different perception, but this is the thing. Like, there is major changes that happen when your perception of the issue changes, right? Like, if you think that Donald Trump is going to, by being in office gives you the ability to advance your life in a much more profound way, you might actually take chances in your life that do that, right? But if you think Biden's going to damage you, then you wouldn't take the chance. You might have been able to at the time, but you didn't have the confidence within yourself because this guy was the leader and the other one wasn't. And there might have been no difference to the outcome if you had just done it, no matter what, right? But because that particular leader happened to be in office at the time, you went ahead and took the chance. So I think about that when it comes to, all kinds of stuff out there. Do they make a difference? Yeah, you bet they do. I mean, but it's not them making the difference. It's your impression that is making the difference, right? You were changing. You are doing things differently. But ultimately, you didn't have to give it that meaning, but most people do. So, my perception of the issue is that the government is bringing in a whole bunch of illegal immigrants to keep the Ponzi scheme going. With our baby boomer population dying off, we're going to have a problem. All right. Let me see here. Let me see if I can find it in here. They increase. Okay, the more labor there is in a state, the more the state is judged naturally rich. Let's go check that out. What does Cantillon have to say about bringing more labor into the country? Right? Because, I mean, a lot of people want to say, hey, they need to do this because it's a brand new concept or something like that, right? So we go to Cantillon, figure out what he has to say. The abstract. I'm not going to read the whole paragraph or the whole chapter. Well, maybe I will. It's not that long. All right. The wealth of a nation depends. This is the abstract of the chapter. And again, this is chapter 16 in part 1 of Cantillon's essay. There's a link down in the description to this essay where you can buy it from Amazon. I get a little commission off of that purchase. However, you do not need to purchase this essay off of Amazon. You can get it for free at the Mises Institute. Cantillon essay on economic theory. Okay. Again, part 1, chapter 16. The more labor there is in a state, the more the state is judged naturally rich. The wealth of a nation depends on putting the labor force to work. Those who are unnecessary for farming can be employed in making higher quality products and manufactured goods, particularly durable goods made from metal. Saving is the key determinant of wealth, And gold is a particular useful form of savings because it can purchase all things, even in time of war. The prince and the property owners determine how people will be employed by their consumption choices. Right? Their consumption choices, if you choose to buy foreign production as opposed to domestic manufacturing. Same thing. While the Catholic Church reduces the resources available to materially sustain the people. He has a problem with the Catholic Church. It's kind of funny. Anyway, I don't know why that's humorous. Anyway, moving on. Let me just read a little bit from this just so we can kind of understand what it is that Cantillon's talking about. In a long calculation, including the supplement, it is shown that the labor of 25 adults is sufficient to provide for 100 other adults with all the necessities of life. 25 people can produce enough for the 100 others. Let me read it again. It shows that labor of 25 adults is sufficient to provide for 100 other adults with all the necessities of life according to the European standard of living. In these estimates, it is true that food, clothing, housing, etc. are coarse and rather elementary, but there is ease and abundance. It may be assumed that a good third of the people in the state are too young or too old to work daily, or for daily work, and that another sixth are property owners, sick, or entrepreneurs of different sorts, who do not, by the labor of their hands, contribute to the different needs of men. That makes half the people without work, or at least without the work in question. So, if 25 persons do all the work needed for the maintenance of 100 others, there remains 25 persons out of the 100 who are capable of working but have nothing to do. The soldiers and the domestic servants in the well-to-do families will form part of these 25. And if all the others are employed refining by additional labor the things necessary for life, like making fine linen, fine cloth, and etc., the state will be judged rich in proportion to this increase in labor, though it adds nothing to the quantity of things needed for the substance of the maintenance of men. Labor gives an additional taste to food and drink. A fork and knife, etc., finely made, are more valuable than those roughly and hastily made. The same may be said of house and bed, a table, and everything needed for comforts of life. It is true that it is of little difference in a state whether people are accustomed to wearing coarse or fine clothes, if both are equally lasting, and whether people eat nicely or coarsely if they have enough and are in good health. Drink, food, clothing, etc. are equally consumed, and whether finely or coarsely produced, this type of wealth is not permanent. But it is always true to say that the states where fine cloths, fine linen, etc. are worn, and where people eat properly and delicately, are considered rich compared to those where these things are cruder. Furthermore, the states where one sees more people living in the finest manners are considered wealthier than those where one sees fewer proportions. But if 25 persons in the 100 of whom we have spoken were employed to produce durable commodities like mining iron, lead, tin, copper, etc., and refining them into tools and instruments for the use of men, such as bowls, plates, and other useful objects that are much more durable than earthenware, the state will not only appear to be richer, but will be in reality. It will be so, especially if these people are employed in mining gold and silver from the earth, which are not only durable metals, but are, so to speak, permanent. Fire itself cannot destroy them. They are generally accepted as a measure of value, and they can always be exchanged for any of the necessities of life. And if these inhabitants work to bring gold and silver in the state, in exchange for the manufacturers and work that they produce and send abroad, their labor will be equally useful and will, in reality, improve the state. The point that seems to determine the comparative greatness of states in their reserve stock above the yearly consumption, i.e. savings, like reserves of cloth, linen, and grain to be used in times of need or war. And as gold and silver can always buy these things, even from the enemies of the state, gold and silver are the true reserve stock of a state. And the larger or smaller the actual quantity of this stock necessarily determines the competitive greatness of the kingdoms and states. If it is the practice to import gold and silver from abroad by exporting the commodities and the merchandise of the state, such as grain, wine, wool, and etc., this will enrich the state by the expense of the decrease in population. Very important. Think about that one right there. This is very much describing the United States. Let me read it again. If it is in the practice to import gold and silver from abroad by exporting the commodities and merchandise of the state. Remember when the United States was the major producer of all the world's finest stuff, right? Such as grain, wine, wool, etc. This will enrich the state, but at the expense of a decrease in population. See, people wonder why it is that we're having population issues. This is like Cantillon describes it. However, if gold and silver are imported from abroad in exchange for the labor of the people, such as manufactured goods and articles which contain little of the production of the soil, this will enrich the state in a useful and essential manner. It is true that in a great state, the 25 persons in 100 of whom we have spoken cannot all be employed in making articles for foreign consumption. 1 million men, for example, would make more clothing than would be annually consumed in the entire commercial world. Like, you got to think this is Cantillon's day from hundreds of years ago. Right? So they're saying like 1 million men would produce way more than would ever be consumed. Most people in every country are clothed with local products, and there will seldom be found in any state 100,000 persons employed in making clothing for foreigners. This is shown in the supplement with regard to England, which, of all nations of Europe, supplies the most cloth to foreigners. In order for the consumption of manufacturers of the state to become significant to foreign countries, the goods must be well made and highly respected by large consumption inside the state. This is necessary to discredit all foreign manufacturers and give plenty of employment to the inhabitants. Right? Let me read that one again. That's pretty important, right? In order for the consumption of the manufacturers of the state to become significant to foreign countries, the goods must be well made and highly respected by a large consumption inside the state. That means we have to produce the best stuff. This is necessary to discredit all the foreign manufacturers. They can't compete against our good quality. And give plenty of employment to the inhabitants. Once they start producing it as good as you're done. If enough employment cannot be found to occupy 25 persons in 100 with work that is useful and profitable to the state, I see no objection to encourage employment which serves only for the ornament or amusement. Right? If you have so much, let me read that again. This is like the United States right now. If enough employment cannot be found to occupy 25 persons in 100 with work that is useful and profitable to the state, I see no objection to encouraging employment which serves only for ornament or amusement. meaning it doesn't even produce or do anything. You're just sitting there like enjoying it, just enjoying what it is that they're produce. Like they don't produce anything of use, right? It's just enjoyment, luxuries. The state is not considered less rich for 1,000 toys, which serves to entertain the ladies and even men, or are used in games of diversion, than it is for useful or serviceable objects. It is said that Diogenes, I don't know what that is, at the siege of Corinth, would roll his barrels so that he might not seem idle while others were working. And we have today societies of men and women occupied in their work and exercise as useless to the state as that of Diogenes. As long as labor of man supplies ornament or even amusement in the state, it is worthwhile to encourage it unless the man can find a way to employ himself usefully. Isn't this funny? Like once you become so rich and you can't find any kind of real use for a job, just go out there and sing and dance or something, man. Get paid to do that. Maybe make YouTube videos or something. All right. It's so telling. That's why I love this. That's why I love this essay. I mean, it just tells you straight up from hundreds of years ago the economic forces are are underlying here. All right. It is always the inspiration of the property owners which encourages or discourages the different occupations of the people and the different kinds of labor that they invent. Right? It all comes down to the property owners and what their wants and tastes and needs and desires are. The example of the prince followed by his court is generally capable of determining the inspiration and taste of the other property owners, and the examples of these last naturally influences all the lower ranks. Therefore, and without doubt, a prince is able by his own example and without any constraint to give such a turn as he likes to the labor of his objects. They are influenced by the rich elitist. Everybody is. You think about it, you see it every day. How many times do people like, some famous actress gets out there and all the women try to have the same hairdo or something like that, right? This is what happens. Everybody tries to be like the rich. If each owner in the state had only a little piece of land, like that which is usually leased to a single farmer, there would hardly be any cities. The people would be more numerous and the state richer if every owner employed the inhabitants supported on his own land with some useful work. Right? If everybody was producing and saving, they would be rich. However, when the nobles have great estates, then they necessarily bring about luxuries and idleness. This is what happens when the rich elitists get in there, right? They necessarily bring about luxuries because they're enjoying all that money, right? And idleness. Whether an abbot at the head of 100 monks, I don't know what an abbot is, I guess, whether an abbot at the head of 100 monks living on the produce of several fine estates, or a nobleman with 50 domestic servants and horses kept only for his service, live on these estates, would be indifferent to the state, if it could remain in constant peace. But if a nobleman with his retinue and his horses is useful to the state in time of war, he can always be useful in the judicial system in keeping of order in the state in peacetime. And in every case, he is the great ornament to the country, while the monks are, as the people say, neither useful nor ornamental in peace or war on this side of heaven. The convents of mendicant Ferreris. I don't understand any of that. Mendicant of Ferreris. Jeez, man. I used to really have a dictionary while I'm doing this. Are much more pretentious. Good Lord, now I'm just stuttering my words. Anyway, to the state, then, okay, because I just can't get the word out, then those of the closed orders. Okay. The closed orders usually do no more harm than to occupy estates which might serve to supply the state with officers and judges, while the mendicants are themselves without useful employment, often interpret and hinder the labor of other people. They take from poor people in charity and substance, which ought to for which ought to for which ought to fortify them for their labor. They cause them to lose much of their time in useless conversation, not to speak of those who involve themselves in families and those who are malicious. Oh, he's talking about the religious part of things. Okay, I'm getting it. So basically he's saying like these religious people take money from the poor, which should be more for fortifying them, and they really don't add much outside of their speakings about families, about the family's involvement and stuff. So basically outside of their spiritual contribution to help you feel better about the position that you're in with your family, they don't really provide you anything, but yet they take all they take all the money from the poor. Experience shows that countries which have embraced Protestantism and have neither monks nor mendicants have become visibly more powerful. They also have the advantage of having suppressed a great number of holy days when no work is done in Roman Catholic countries. So they basically, no, we're not taking religious days off. You go to work every single day. Okay? In which diminished the labor of the people by about an eighth part of the year, by literally taking all these days off. That's so funny. And if a state wanted to achieve its full potential, it might be possible, it seems to me, to diminish the number of mendicants by incorporating them into the monasteries as vacancies or deaths occur. This could be done while still providing places in the monastery for those who show little or no aptitude in speculative science, but who are capable of advancing in the particular arts, i.e., in some areas of mathematics. The celibacy of churchmen is not as disadvantageous as is popular believed, as in shown in the preceding chapter, but their idleness is very harmful. All right, thank you guys for letting me stutter through that. I was having a hard time reading and actually seeing a lot of that because I don't have my glasses out here. But I think you guys get it, right? I mean, if you just kind of listen to what he was saying there, is that 25% of the people are doing all the work. Right? I mean, that's probably been the case throughout history, and I think that's always going to be the case. All these other people are literally conditioned to manage the situation in which that you are providing all the abundance to them for. Like, that's the way it's been throughout history, and it's probably going to be that way going into history. You're going into the future too. Alrighty, guys, what time is it? It's getting late. All right, did I get any more super chats? All right, no, still got the, okay, oops, live. 80-20. And AI robots doing the new slaves can't. Many slaves were treated very well as they were looked at as tools. Few craftsmen abuse their tools and expect good use from them. Huh? All right, what will the state do with all of us slaves now that we are no longer needed since the new slaves have arrived? Oh, man. All right. Okay, pretentious like a 13-year-old girl. No reason to have broken slaves. Huh? The 80-20 rule, the Pareto rule, or the Pareto principle. All right. To all-nighter. I mean, they were not compensated, feeding them low-quality foods and keeping them in ghettos. They are still massively profiting off of their labor. Go eat some lunch, Yui. Yeah, I agree. I think it's time. we've been at it for 2.5 hours, and we kind of broken down just about as much as I think we should probably break down and process today. Although we could probably just sit here and do this all day long anyway, because that's just what we do here. But I got to go to town and get me a new set of shoes because I need some new shoes. And that's what I'm going to do today. Thank you for being here. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.